Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, it's being dubbed the world's last opportunity to tackle the climate crisis. I'll be talking shortly to Osprey Orielle Lake, who's the Executive Director of the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network, on what needs to come out of those COP26 talks. Also, a special France 24 report on the female rangers of Virunga National Park in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And a Paris exhibition celebrates the works of Vivian Maier, an American street photographer whose work was only discovered and recognised after her death. But first, and it's been described as the world's last chance to prevent catastrophic global warming. The COP26 talks in the Scottish city of Glasgow will last for 12 days as nations attempt to reach a global agreement to reduce carbon emissions. Despite the push for emissions to be capped at 1.5 degrees Celsius, current UN estimates indicate a catastrophic warming of 2.7 degrees Celsius is likely to happen. And as we've reported here before, women are more vulnerable to the climate crisis. This because they represent the majority of the world's poor and are far more dependent on threatened natural resources. Joining me now from the San Francisco Bay Area is Osprey Orielle Lake, the founder and executive director of the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network. Thank you so much for your time, Osprey. You've just made a statement on behalf of your NGO at the UN and will be in Glasgow. So in your opinion, are you expecting anything substantive to emerge from these COP26 talks?
Well, I think that that's always a very difficult question because, of course, it's very important that world governments meet in this just life-threatening crisis for the entire planet and the web of life. The point is, how much can we push our governments to really take the necessary steps to cut global emissions? And this is very difficult because we are up against some of the biggest industries in the world, like the fossil fuel industry. That is really behind the scenes, but we can never forget they're always there. And so if we're really going to have progress, we're really going to need to take on some of the extractive industries to ensure that we can actually meet the targets that we need to.
Can you explain to me a little bit further as to why women are so disproportionately impacted by global warming?
We see in the work that we do in the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network that not only are women impacted first and worst by both environmental degradation and the climate crisis, but also one of the untold stories is that they're central to solutions. We actually can't get to sustainability without women. So we see all kinds of studies from the United Nations, but also through lived experience, that when women are in charge of water programs or food programs, study after study shows that those programs are successful. About 60 to 80% of all household food production in developing countries is done by women. When you do all of these different water programs in areas that are drought-ridden, those programs don't work unless you involve women in them because they're collecting the water and they're observing what is happening with the water tables and what's happening in their regions. And in wealthier countries, we know that some of the most important leaders in terms of environmental legislation are women. Or we can just look recently at the global COVID-19 pandemic, and we have seen in a lot of different news stories how countries that are led by women have done far better in caring for their countries than their male counterparts. So for a host of reasons, on the one hand, women are being most impacted by these crises due to unequal gender norms. And on the other hand, we see that they're key to solutions. So we need to get them at the table and be part of the decision making because not only do they have a lot of knowledge because of their firsthand impacts, but they also have keys to solutions.
And given what you've just said, what will be the degree of female representation at COP26?
Well, in 2020, the She Changes Climate campaign sent out an open letter signed by more than 400 female climate leaders, including WeCan, to the UK government, calling for accountability for gender equality on COP26 organizing team. At that time, the COP26 leadership consisted only of men. And since then, we've advocated for further women leaders. And a recent Guardian article found that roughly 45% of the COP26 team is now women, but almost all of the senior public-facing roles are taken by men. And I just want to make two quick points about this. There's a deeper issue here. Yes, we want to have equal numbers of women sitting at the decision-making table at COP26, but we also want them to bring a feminist analysis. Having women bodies in the room is very important, but also we're bringing a much deeper analysis that addresses interlocking issues of patriarchy and our economic values and issues around social and racial justice. So it's having women at the table, but it's also about addressing root causes that really is talking about a systems change and a values change. That's what we want women to bring to the table.
So, Osprey, do you think that is going to happen at Glasgow?
I think that we will fight in every way possible to have our voices heard. And I don't want to say that nothing will happen. I think things are happening, but I don't think it will be to the degree that we need them to be, in that COP26 is an incredibly important place for advocacy, and it needs to go far beyond this talks in November.
Osprey Orielle Lake, it's been great speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and let's see everybody in the streets and doing everything we can for the global climate emergency.
And staying with the environmental theme, the Virunga National Park in the Democratic Republic of Congo is one of the oldest and largest parks in sub-Saharan Africa. Some 700 rangers risk their lives daily to protect the wildlife from poachers and armed groups. Among them, a small but growing contingent of women hoping to challenge stereotypes. France 24's Clément Bonnereau and Juliette Dubois have this report.
Ishango in the heart of the Virunga National Park. It is here on the shores of the majestic Lake Edward that future park rangers are trained. For 6 months, 150 students live and study together in this camp, among them 10 women. Training begins early with an obstacle course under the watchful eye of Coach Angèle.
It gets easier with time. After a few weeks, you get used to it. Step by step.
For these students, selected from over 10,000 applicants joining the ranks of the park rangers, is an immense pride.
I want to help protect nature, because here in our country, there are so many animals under the threat of poaching.
Men and women undergo the exact same training. They learn how to use a rifle as well as combat techniques and follow classes in human rights and biodiversity. Angèle was one of the first women to graduate from Ishango 8 years ago.
In the beginning, the men would come up to me and say, "No way. Do you think she's strong enough?" And I would think to myself, just wait 1 week and they'll see. I have to give my best to show them that I am capable. I can do better than them.
Virunga National Park now has 30 female rangers out of a total of 700. Rebecca was trained in 2014. She's since been promoted to team leader.
Progression en colonne double.
She says her job has allowed her to become independent, even though she's had to deal with prejudice.
Il n'y a pas de métier d'homme dans la vie.
There's no such thing as a man's job. People who say there is are wrong. This is how I earn my living. When I bring money home, are people going to ask whether I earned the money from a man's job or from a woman's job?
In Kinshasa, the head of the Congolese Institute for Nature Conservation believes that hiring more women can help to raise awareness about conservation work.
Women are able to create family ties, as well as ties of confidentiality and intimacy that are much stronger than those of men. And insofar as we commit to involving the local community in the management of protected areas, I believe it's essential to hire more women.
The ICCN is not yet aiming for parity, but it hopes to inspire more and more women to get involved in protecting biodiversity.
And finally, the late Vivian Maier is one of the greatest photographers of her generation, capturing life on the streets of New York and Chicago. But her work was only truly discovered after her death in 2009. And now the Musée de Luxembourg in Paris is showcasing her photographs, as Wassim Cornet reports.
From 1950 to 1990, Vivian Maier was a nanny working for families in New York and Chicago. But on top of her day job, she took pictures, lots of pictures, 150,000 over the course of half a century. But they were never published or showcased. Vivian Maier just stored them in dozens of boxes, a treasure that was uncovered by John Maloof, who bought these boxes filled with film at an auction.
I have 700 rolls of undeveloped color film, 2,000 undeveloped rolls of black and white film.
And he decided the world needed to see them.
It was more than I can handle myself. So I thought, let's see what the museums will do to help me. Maybe I could get this into MoMA. Maybe I could get this into Tate Modern.
And the museums loved it. Vivian Maier's pictures are now showcased across the globe. The work of a woman with an incredible gift, which she used to tell the stories found on America's streets.
Vivian Maier was a person who was invisible. She wasn't living the American dream. She belonged to the country's darker side. And I think photography was her way of existing, of building a relationship with the world around her.
Was there some kookiness?
Probably some kookiness, yes, and some quirkiness, too.
And although no one was able to see Maier's work when she was alive, today experts believe she is one of the greatest photographers in history. Vivian Maier continued taking pictures of the small details in her life, her city, and her country until she died, and the mystery of why she never showed them to anyone lives on.
And some stunning photographs there. And that's it for now. You can also connect with us via our Facebook page, that of course being France24.51%, or do send us a tweet at _51%. So until our next show, bye for now.